So we're going to get started. We might sound a little bit like Flashpoint today, but we all seen Flashpoint, right? Well, most of us in here are familiar. Yeah, everything's coming to a flashpoint. But so we're going to start in actually the Torah portion. The Torah portion for today is Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. But we're going to start actually, we're going to go right into chapter 10. And the Torah portion talks about the different offerings and stuff and what the Israelites were supposed to give as offerings, burnt offerings, cereal offerings. Then you get into chapter 10 and, he continues to go on about stuff like that. And as you get into 11, he's talking about foods and things that are clean and unclean. But the thing we're going to focus on today is chapter 10, verse 10. Chapter 10 in Leviticus, verse 10 says, "And you shall make a distinction and recognize a difference between the holy and the common or unholy, and between the unclean and the clean. And you are to teach the Israelites all the statutes which the Lord has spoken to them by Moses." So the thing we're going to focus on is that part where he says, "You shall make a distinction and recognize a difference between the holy and the common or unholy, and between the unclean and the clean." We're not going to touch the unclean and clean too much right yet, but what we're going to focus on is the holy part. And with saying that, just a couple of definitions. So when you look at the definition of distinction, it means a difference or contrast between similar things or people. But this next definition is the one that really stuck out to me and is really what describes us as a people and what we need to be walking in. As distinction is excellence that sets someone or something apart from others. And that's what we've been called. We've been called to be set apart. We've been called to be set apart and from others, from things. But that key word in there was excellence. Excellence that sets someone or something apart from others. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but in this day and age that we are in, we need to be making sure that we're in excellence first and foremost. But we are setting ourselves apart from the things that are unholy. Amen. There's holy and there's unholy. And we need to not only make the distinction, but we as Christians have to be the distinction. Right. Are we as Christians a distinction between holy and unholy, between clean and unclean? We're the distinction. We set the standard. How are we living as Christians? What is our standard? How high is our standard? We need to be having a standard of excellence, a standard of morality, a standard for that which is good. The things that this world, the thing that's this, let's just narrow it down a little bit and go to this nation. The thing that this nation calls holy is unholy. And what this nation is calling unholy is holy. Just like the whole thing where we're calling good evil and evil good. Okay, we're now gotten into that. So distinction, an excellence that sets someone or something apart from others. The other key word in that is it says, "You shall make a distinction and recognize a difference." Okay, people should recognize a difference in us. There should be a recognition of those people are different. Those people aren't like the world. There's a difference between those people. And the difference is they're holy. And they keep them set apart and themselves away from that which is unholy. So the definition of recognize or recognition is to acknowledge the existence, validity, or legality of something. Or it's to identify someone or something from having encountered them before or to be fully aware of. So as Christians who are a distinction, we need to also be a recognition. And we need to be fully aware of what is going on in this world. of what's going on in this nation, of what's going on in Israel. You know, we talk about that all the time. We need to be paying attention to the days that we're in. We need to be paying attention to the things that are going on around us, and we need to be standing up. And I know maybe sometimes somebody was like, oh, you guys say this all the time. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. You've got to, I don't know, get with the program. And once and for all, make that quality decision and realize I am a distinction. And I recognize what's going on here, and I'm going to draw a line in the sand and stand on the right side of that line.
I was just going to say that the world really doesn't like distinction in general. You notice that society is more and more trying to remove any kind of distinction. There is a distinction between male and female. There is a distinction between certain things. I just heard this week that there's a school, I'm not recalling where it was in the United States, but this school district was removing their special classes for exceptionally bright students. They're removing that because it makes other students feel like they're different than them, and it will make them feel like they can't do something. No, everybody has equal opportunity to get into that. You know, you can apply yourself just as much as someone else. And they were also trying to say, well, this school has too many whites and too many Asians in it. We got to have more diversity. It's like people don't like distinction. They don't like excellence. If somebody's excellent, then that means that something's wrong with you. If you're excellent, you think you're better than I am. No, it doesn't mean that I think I'm better than you. It means that I've applied myself to get to the place where I'm at. You know, every person has the opportunity. Look at Ben Carson. He came from the poorest of the poor. His mother didn't even know how to read, but she made him read, and she made him study. And she said, you're not going to be like I am. You're going to make something of your life. And guess what? He became one of the world's most renowned neurosurgeons. And look he's been a presidential candidate. Everything that he's done is because he had someone pushing him to excellence. You know, we need that person that's pushing us to excellence. No, don't just stay down here on this level. Anybody can just sit here and, well, I'm not going to really apply myself. I'm never going to be anything special. Well, fine. If that's where you decide that you're going to stay, that's your choice. But you have the choice to pursue excellence. And that's how we're supposed to be as children of God. We're supposed to pursue excellence. We're supposed to be a cut above the rest, not to lord it over people, but to show them the standard that they too can make something different of their lives. You don't have to stay down there like everybody else. You don't have to be who you came from, whatever culture you came from, whatever background you might have come from, whatever circumstances you came from. We've got to stop blaming our circumstances and everything around us for our own lack of excellence. We have a choice to be excellent.
So let's turn to 2 Corinthians, and 2 Corinthians chapter 6. And Yahweh has stuff to say about being separate and set apart. And he has things to say about being holy and about being not like the world. So 2 Corinthians, we're actually going to start at verse 14. In 2 Corinthians 6:14, we've read this many times before. And you know, when people read this scripture, they have the tendency to think about marriage. You know, don't be unequally yoked to an unbeliever, which is true. But it doesn't just cover that. It covers us as Christians. What are you as a Christian doing being unequally yoked with somebody that doesn't share the same values that you do, that doesn't share the same morals that you do? What are you doing being unequally yoked with somebody that's pro-choice? What are you doing being unequally yoked with somebody who thinks it's okay for a woman and woman to get married and man to get married? What are you doing as a Christian being unequally yoked with those who represent the sin and evil in this world when you're supposed to represent Yahweh and the purity and the holiness of this world? What are you doing being yoked with these individuals? So in verse 14, it says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Okay, it says right there, unbelievers. It's not saying do not be equally yoked with, your future, for your person that's going to be your husband that's not a believer. That's not just applying to that. It's all unbelievers. It's anybody. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Do not, now this is the Amplified. Now listen carefully to how the Amplified describes this. Do not make mismated alliances with them or come under a different yoke with them, inconsistent with your faith. Okay? Don't make mismated alliances. Okay? When you're becoming yoked with someone, you're making an alliance. Okay, when you're becoming yoked with someone, and this is a whole other rabbit trail to go down another time, but you're creating a soul tie with that individual. Okay, your covenant, it's like a covenant. But when you're creating a soul tie with an individual, it's very dangerous. When you're yoked with a person that is not of like faith, that is not of like standards, that is not of like beliefs, that's a dangerous, dangerous soul tie to have formed. And like I said, soul ties is a whole other sermon that we will probably go down at one point in time, sometime. But, do not make mismated alliances with them. That word alliance is a strong word. You see alliances when it comes to nations and companies and business partners and stuff. They make an alliance with each other. Like Mom just said, what is that? It's a covenant. It's a covenant. We become one in this. Why would you want to become one with an individual that is against Yahweh, that is for abortion, that is for marriage between a man and a man, and a woman and a woman? An alliance, just like a soul tie, it's the same thing, and it's equally dangerous.
And there's some people who try to split out their politics with what they say they believe in the Word of God. Okay, fine, yeah, I believe God, but I'm voting for a party that is against God. There's never been a time in history where the parties are more clear as to which side of the line they stand. The fact that the last time they created the platform of one particular party, they removed God and cheered, removing every mention of God in that. Why would you, as a believer, come alongside that platform? Why would you come alongside that? When it says you're coming under a different yoke with them, inconsistent with your faith, take the word yoke and change it into platform. You're coming under a different platform with them, inconsistent with your faith. You can't have it both ways. How can you do that? How can you as a believer stand for something that you say that you don't believe? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth there. Right.
Or how can you as a believer, like take for example, okay, like Jordan was just saying, and it says, for what partnership have right living and right standing with God with iniquity and lawlessness? Or how can light have fellowship with darkness? Right. So how can somebody that's a believer and say they're very active in something, let's take the issue of abortion. How can somebody who's a believer, who's pro-life, who fights, one of their life commitments is to fight against abortion. Okay, abortion is wrong, abortion is murder. But then can turn around and to sit there and publicly praise an individual that's not for any of that. So how can you, as somebody who's against abortion, who knows it's wrong, who you stand up and say it's wrong, but then you go and support an individual that say it's right, and you publicly say, oh, they're a wonderful person, and they, such a motivational person, and they have so much good to say, and just whatever.
They've done so much good.
They've done so much good. They've done so much good. Anyways, how can you, as an individual, have one stand, but then publicly support someone who very much publicly is completely opposite of you and decrees and declares they're opposite of you? And that's where that all comes to right here. The double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. So verse 15, What harmony can there be between Yeshua and Belial, the devil? Or what has a believer in common with an unbeliever? What agreement can there be between a temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, even as God said, I will dwell in and with and among them, and will walk in and with and among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. So verse 17, so come out from among unbelievers and sever yourselves from them, says the Lord, and touch not any unclean thing. Then I will receive you kindly and treat you with favor. Do you get what that says? He's giving a command. He's saying, come out from among them. Separate yourselves from the world. Don't be seen with somebody. Don't associate. Don't praise somebody who is verbally and publicly saying they're for the murder of abortion, that for babies, that they're for marriage between a man and a man. It says right here, separate yourselves and sever yourselves from them, and touch not any unclean thing. Now, we have a tendency to talk about food a lot with that, but touch not any unclean thing. Any. Abortion is an unclean thing. Homosexual marriage is an unclean thing. All the stuff that's going on in this nation, the transgender stuff, the drag queens preaching behind pulpits, that is a disgrace, and it's an unclean thing. But what does he says in his eyes? What does this, and it should be in our eyes. Okay, it should be in our eyes. But what does it say right there? Separate yourselves from him and touch not any unclean thing. Then I will receive you kindly and treat you with favor. When you do this, then I will receive you kindly and treat you with favor. In verse 18, and I will be a father to you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. It's conditional. That's a conditional right there. Those are all conditional. And it's a statement that Yahweh's making. It's a command that Yahweh's making. But he's saying to separate yourselves. If you go back to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Okay, not only is he saying to be separate and separate yourselves from the world, he's called us to be holy. And so in chapter 1, verse 2, it says, to the church assembly of God, which is in Corinth, to those consecrated and purified and made holy in Yeshua the Anointed One, who are selected and called to be saints, Yahweh's people, together with all those who in any place call upon and give honor to the name of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, both their Lord and ours. So it says right there, to those who have consecrated and purified and made holy, who have been selected and called to be saints, Yahweh's people. That's who we are. And that's how we have to stand up. You know, the definition for holy, interesting, we're reading it in these scriptures, dedicated or consecrated to Yahweh. It's morally and spiritually excellent. What did we just hear about in distinction? Distinction, excellence that sets someone or something apart from others. Holy, morally and spiritually excellent. The Hebrew word for holy literally means separate or set apart. So if you think about it in this way, in relation to Yahweh, to his holiness, we're talking about his absolute purity. Absolute purity. He is unstained by sin and evil, and that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be walking unstained by sin and evil. And we're supposed to be walking in a manner where we're standing up against the evil. Like I said at the beginning, are we as Christians a distinction between holy and unholy, between clean and unclean? Who are we? What is our standard? Are we bold and courageous and willing enough to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. Who are we? We need to be what the Bible has called us to be. We need to stand up and be a voice. I'm getting ahead of myself now, but I know I was sharing with Mom the other day, and it just really went off inside of me because it was like, come on, people, what is going on? And I don't know how many of you saw Flashpoint on Monday night with Hank Kunneman. And when Hank Kunneman was talking about, what our current president just did, now it's always been around, but to make a declaration, when you make a declaration about something, okay, declarations hold weight. They hold weight with Yahweh, and they hold weight with the devil, okay? So when our current president made a declaration, which was meant to be a slap in the face to Christians, on Easter, to declare that day, can I say it? It was all over the place. To declare that day Transgender Visibility Day, okay? On Easter. Don't tell me, there's no coincidences. Don't tell me that that was not on purpose, okay? They've always had, for the longest time they've had that. There was no need to make that declaration, okay? Like Mom just said, like declaring Christmas. Like, come on, it's gonna be Christmas Day. That's what hello, okay? We already know December 25th is Christmas. But to make that declaration on Easter. Now, bad enough in that, but when Hank Kunneman was talking about it, on Easter Sunday, he had his Easter service, okay, and was Resurrection Sunday, yeah, to them. He had his service, and he was point blank saying some things, okay? Hank is just like, you go Hank, okay? He's one of those pastors, he really is, in this country that's like, you go, man, you go. And I don't know if it's the right word to say. It was shocking to hear what took place afterwards. Really, the things that go on in this nation kind of fall off the scale of shocking anymore. Just when you think something was like, what? It's just whatever. But it can't get any worse. You think it can't get any worse until, okay, whoa, yeah, I guess it can get worse. But with Hank Kunneman, as he rightfully should and had the right to, as a pastor who is responsible and accountable to make sure his people are going in the right direction and walking in truth and building them up and encourage them in who they are and whose they are, and to stand up like the patriots in our old stood up for this nation. The patriots of now need to stand up for this nation. So Hank Kunneman was rightfully doing what he should have been doing. Now, obviously, we know, as pastors, they get attacked for what they say behind the pulpit. It happens all the time. You've got a common congregation member that makes an attack, or somebody in the world that makes an attack. But when it comes from another pastor, and that's exactly what happened to Hank Kunneman, to have another pastor, where's the disconnect? To have another pastor viciously attack him for taking a stand against what was wrong, to take a biblical stand for Yahweh, another pastor, I dare say you're not a pastor. At least not of this Bible, not of this word you're not. You're not led by Holy Spirit, you're a wolf, okay? And there's things like that going on across this nation. So when you have an example like that, it's like, and Hank Kunneman made this comment, he's like, and there's so many of them like that. But where are the pastors? Where are the true pastors? Where are the pastors? And I was saying that to the TV. I'm like, well, there's a handful of them in Fitchburg, okay? We're right here. There's a congregation in Fitchburg that is right with you, Hank, that'll stand up. That's who we are. But Hank was like, where are the pastors? Okay, you can get sometimes the congregation members. But where are the pastors, the ones that are supposed to be standing up and leading them in the right direction? Where are they? Well, like Mom just said, well, here's some right here. I wish that, there's some invention where you could talk back to the TV and he could hear you. It'd be like, hey, Cake, we're right here. We're right here in Fitchburg. Go, man, we're right here. Anyways. Right, Coletta. We should write a letter. We should, yeah.
Let them know we're here.
You know what? We're
backing you.
We're for you, man. You did good. Anyways, that was just one of some examples that I have. I'm getting ahead of myself anyways. But, so I wanted to read you a few things, though, from Rick Renner's book. And I actually had started reading this, this book. It's How to Keep Your Head On Straight in a World Gone Crazy type of thing.
It's an important thing to know.
It's
how to keep your head on straight in a world gone crazy.
And this is a good book to read. But I had started reading it, and then I had put it down for a while and had gotten into some other stuff. And last night after Jordan and I were done talking and I was sharing my examples with her and stuff, I had gone upstairs to do my reading, and Holy Spirit had said to me, get out the book and start reading from where you left off. And I have to say, I was a little odd that when I started reading where I left off, lined up exactly to what Jordan and I were talking about and what is going on. I mean, this book does talk about what's going on anyways in general, but I'm going to read you a couple of things and to paint a picture of what Rick was talking about. But then to paint a picture of what the early church dealt with in their time to now what we're dealing with in our time. And so the title of this says, Another Form of Early Error. So previously he's talking about this net of deception that we are now, this nation is caught in a net of deception. It reminded me of if you ever go to the mini golf courses and they have these nets up around the driving range so so the balls don't go out of the driving range, but they end up catching birds in them. The birds get ensnared in these nets. Right. And there's a man there that walks around and works there to get the birds untrapped. But there's a net of deception in this country where thousands upon thousands upon thousands have been ensnared in this net, and they're still trapped in it. And unfortunately, if you read your Bible, many are going to stay trapped in it. But anyways, within that early net of deception used by the enemy to lure believers away from their strong stance on Yahweh's word was another group of errant leaders called the Nicolaitans. The Nicolaitans. Yeshua spoke against this group when he appeared to the Apostle John to deliver his message to the 7 churches of Asia. The Nicolaitans said in effect, we're living too separately. Whoa, okay. I think that's a term we've been hearing nowadays. We're living too separately, too strictly. Pagans don't understand us. We don't go to their theaters, their bathhouses. Well, hopefully there's no more bathhouses. I wouldn't want to go to those anyways. Or their temples. Maybe we should compromise just a little to open up dialogue between us so they'll accept us. That was a danger back then, and it's a danger that's taking place now. Yeshua referred to this mindset as the deeds and the doctrine of the Nicolaitans in Revelation chapter 2. In Greek, the word Nicolaitan is a compound comprised of the words nikeo, meaning victory or to conquer, and laos, meaning laity or people. When these two words are compounded into one, the new word means those who conquer the people, or those who have victory over the people. These individuals that are standing up and promoting the things of the devil and are leading their people in this direction, as this group, they're modern day. They're having victory over the people. The doctrine of the Nicolaitans was a doctrine of compromise that brought defeat to the people of Yahweh. Different parts of the early church had fallen prey to this error, and Yeshua firmly addressed the matter when addressing the church in Pergamum. After the Pergamene congregation had withstood wave after wave of horrific persecution from the outside, evil was found lurking in their midst, an evil more deadly than the physical persecution they had witnessed and experienced. The Nicolaitans were encouraging believers to compromise their faith in order to coexist peacefully with the world. What is going on today? Believers are being encouraged to compromise their faith in order to coexist peacefully with the world. We're not supposed to coexist with the world. Okay, we're reading it right now. We're supposed to be separate and set apart. This seduction from within was more dangerous to the effectiveness and the future of the early church than any external opposition that would come against Yahweh's people. This mirrors exactly what some are saying today. Just tone it down. Don't be so strict. Sometimes you have to go along to get along with the unsaved. If you do this, maybe the world won't view you so obstinate and unyielding. And unfortunately, that's what's taking place. Those that are standing up, the world is viewing them as, oh, you're just obstinate. You're just unyielding. You're just not with the times. You're just overly strict. You just don't get it. You're just legalistic. When Yahweh's people compromise their stand for Yahweh, it always results in their defeat. When Yahweh's people compromise their faith, they lose. They lose power, they lose holiness, they lose victory. When his people compromise their stand for him, it always results in their defeat. Yeshua loved the Nicolaitans, and he died on the cross for them, but he hated their teachings and doctrines. Like Yeshua, we need to take a strong stand against compromise. We must walk in love towards those around us, but we must also walk in holiness. To walk in power, we must walk by a higher standard, and that standard is the word of Yahweh. There is no getting around this spiritual law. Compromise is spiritually fatal to the individual Christian believer and to the life of the local church. Yahweh calls on his people to make the decision to have no compromise in their lives. This is the day we live in, when people are tempted to compromise their faith and to modify what they believe because of the changing culture surrounding them. And actually, that's where I'm going to stop on that part. But then I'm going to move on to another section, because we're talking about taking a stand and standing up and stuff. And, the majority of the people are like, rah, 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 there you go. But then you have the few that are kind of like, no, we can't. You gotta tame down a little. You gotta be low key. We don't want to stir up the waters, okay? Well, you know what? We need to stir up the water sometimes. It says, Yahweh's spokesmen are expected to be prophetic voices to the church. As such, these leaders must stand strong on the side of truth, even if the spiritual atmosphere has changed and the modern church does not agree with the truth they are commanded to speak. Now, he hits it on the nail right there. We're commanded to speak. These are things we're commanded to speak. So, I had actually, before I went to the part where Yahweh had said to me, read off, start from where you left off, I backtracked a couple pages, and that's when I found that. And I was like, oh. So I went to the actual page that I had left off at a couple months ago, and it's titled, Hot Topics and Cultural Issues. Silence is not the answer.
Amen.
Okay? Silence is not the answer. A crucial aspect of speaking for Yahweh also includes addressing hot social topics and cultural issues on the basis of his word. This is part of the responsibility of the pulpit.
Yes, it is.
What Hank Kuhneman was doing was part of his responsibility from the pulpit. What we do is part of our responsibility from the pulpit.
Right.
The answers, solutions, or principles to deal with these societal dilemmas are found in the immutable truths of Yahweh's word. The New Testament writers addressed many hot topics and cultural issues that were relevant to the first century, such as sexuality, marriage, slavery, addictions, alcohol abuse, just to name a few. Those who were converting to Yeshua from paganism came with a baggage of messy relationships, addictions of all kinds, nonsensical thinking, and residual soul damage. That's right. Okay? Catch that. Residual soul damage incurred before they were born again. The spiritual leaders of the early church boldly addressed the issues believing at that time faced in their lives, and those timeless answers still speak to us today. Today, the world we live in is also filled with multitudes who have been negatively impacted by society's moral mess. The Holy Spirit prophesied that deluded thinking would pervade much of society at the end of the age. That very point on Yahweh's timeline that we are living right now. That means today's spiritual leaders must confront the spreading delusion and speak to the heart, catch that, and speak to, okay? Speak to the hot cultural issues of this modern era, no matter how comfortable they are to address. Christians impacted by this deception are largely unaware that the influences they are consuming are poisonous and potentially lethal to their destinies and everything good in their lives. They need Yahweh's spokesman to address the subjects that assail them on every side. Silence is not the answer. Right. Silence is not the answer. Standing up and being vocal is what the answer is. Pastors and spiritual leaders must see themselves, and I would say this congregation, okay, must see themselves in much the same way as a father sees his role as the head of his home and family. There are things the children must hear at home from the head of the house, and if they don't, they will be educated by peers, naysayers, and others who are biblically ignorant, willfully or otherwise. Why do we take a stand about not sending our children to public school? Okay? Because I'm not going to allow, as a parent, someone else to teach my child the ways of the world. Okay? It's not going to happen. It's simply a fact that if Yahweh's leaders would not address these issues, the vacuum would be filled with the voice of the world, which will inevitably lead countless multitudes astray. Leaders who ignore difficult topics have not fully grasped or embraced their God-given responsibility to provide the right response. It is essential for Yahweh's spokesman to speak up and communicate what he says on controversial cultural issues in order to help Christians keep their heads on straight in this world that seems to have gone morally crazy. Now, just to back that up for something that he now says, it gives you the reason why, okay? Right. There's a reason why we do what we do. Right. There's a cause. It's for the cause, okay? So in 2 Timothy 4:2, Paul continued, preach the word, be instant. That's what we've been called to do. Preach the good news. Preach the word. Well, what's the word? From Genesis to Revelation. What's the word? Everything that Yahweh has addressed from beginning to end. Right. The word instant is a translation of the Greek word ephesistemi, which is a military word that means stay at your post. Right. Stay at your posts. It's significant that Paul used a military word when he commanded Timothy and all public spiritual leaders to preach the word. The truth is, when a Christian leader declares Yahweh's word in a public forum, it is the highest level of spiritual warfare. The word of Yahweh is sharper than any two-edged sword. Within the covers of the Bible are all the answers for every challenge man could ever face. The Bible can bring new life to hearts, established order to confused minds, and refresh souls that are being rocked by emotions. Now remember, we're not fighting against flesh and blood. No, we're not. Okay, that's not what we're fighting against. Right. We're fighting against spirits. Right. Spirits that have been unleashed in this nation. When Yahweh's word is decreed from a person's mouth that is connected to a believing heart, that word has a life-changing and yoke-destroying effect. It penetrates the hearts of people who are in sin. It sets people free who are in bondage. It shines a light so brilliant that darkness is expelled. It heals the body and delivers the mind. It brings peace shalom to children and families. It breaks strongholds and transforms the mind. It changes destinies. The Bible provides light for the path ahead, freedom for the mind, strength and resolve for the will, healing for the body, and vision for a bright future. There is power in the word of Yahweh that even the devil cannot deny. That's right. That's what spiritual leaders are called to preach. It is therefore no wonder that Satan tries to stop the preaching, teaching, and ministry of the word. He hates Yahweh's word to be declared on the earth because the enemy knows that mental, emotional, and spiritual strongholds are demolished when it is proclaimed in power. This is why Paul admonished Timothy and all spiritual leaders in essence, saying, stay at your post. Keep preaching Yahweh's message as he intends for it to be preached.
Right.
This is the day that we're in now.
Right.
Those previous things that Rick Renner was saying, that is what we're facing now. But what did he just end with that? We have been called to stand up. We've been called to stay at our post, to be watchmen on the walls, and to stand up and decree and declare what is right. Decree and declare what is wrong, what is rightfully right and rightfully wrong. So, with that being said, that was leading up to, some of the examples that I wanted to share. But, so it's like, you know what? Never mind the world. The world's going to do what the world's going to do. Never mind the world. Take it closer to home for a second, and let's look at ourselves.
Right.
Okay? Let's look at ourselves. What about us? What is our stand between holy and unholy?
Right.
What is our stand between the clean and the unclean? Who are we going to represent? Who are we going to stand for? Are we going to cave into all the stuff that's going on in this nation, to all the constant barrage of the evil and the immorality and the wickedness, the lawlessness that's taking place? Or are we going to stand strong and rise up as the Hank Kunnemans? Okay, rise up as those ones back in the Bible rose up, right, and they spoke what the truth was. But they didn't just speak, they took action.
Right.
It's one thing to talk the talk, but not walk the talk. It's a completely different thing when you talk the talk and you talk the walk. And that's who we're supposed to be. Not just talking the talk, but talking the walk. Talking the talk?
Walking the talk.
Walking the talk. I got too many talks and walks in there. There's walkie-talkies. You get the picture. Walkie-talkies. We're walkie-talkies. Okay? We're physical walkie-talkies. All right? But just to give a couple examples of things that have gone on. Jordan was talking about the natural stuff. The earthquakes and the tornadoes. We were talking last night, and I'd see this thing the other day about how they just came out from the National Weather Service, how the year 2024 is going to be one of the worst years for hurricanes. Okay, connect the dots. Connect the dots.
And they're talking about like with this earthquake that happened in New Jersey, 4.8. It's the strongest earthquake that's happened on the East Coast since I think 2011 or so. But it wasn't only that earthquake. There were 12 earthquakes in total over the past 2 weeks. Some of them weren't detected, but they kept getting increasingly stronger in that area. And they're talking about how, that whole area is on a fault line that up to now has not been active, but it could reactivate at any point. Right. Okay, well, in the end times, we're told there's going to be mighty and violent earthquakes in various places. It's going to be happening around the world. But the fact that it shook New York City just a couple days after they lit up all the buildings in the city in support of that Transgender Identity Day. I saw this visibility. There was a picture I saw that was showing, I think it was back in the 1950s, all the buildings, the Empire State Building and all the ones around were lit up with the sign of the cross on Easter. How far have they gone? No coincidence that just a couple days later, this earthquake happens that shakes New York City. They've got to wake up. the whole nation really does, but especially those centers. Cities seem to be the centers of the depravity that's going on.
So, just some of the examples, and like Jordan was saying, we were talking about last week, I think it was last week, about the signs in the heavens and how you got to be paying attention to the signs. And the Bible talks about how there will be wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and famines. We went all through that last week. And we're seeing it happen in an escalation.
Yes, we are.
Things are, like Jordan was saying, like with that earthquake, 12 of them have taken place over the last 2 weeks.
There's been a bunch in Iran.
And then a bunch in Iran. But with those earthquakes, and they were all centered, the magnitude thing, like she said, in Lebanon, and then there was 2 specific cities in New Jersey.
That's right.
White House Junction, which I kind of think that's a whole story in itself, okay? White House Junction, and I don't recall, the other one was I think Grand Central or something like that was the other city. And like she said, it increased in magnitude. The first one was a 1.0, then I think the second one was a 1.3, and then it just built through the 2s and 3s until it got to the other day of 4.8 or whatever it was. These are signs of the times. Okay? And when we hear these things, not only do we need to stand up against what's morally wrong, but we need to help people that have been deceived. We need to help people that just don't, like, they're just, some of them are innocently don't just get what's going on. They haven't been educated. They're listening to the wrong voices. Okay, listening to the wrong voices. But when we are to take a stand as Christians and make the distinction, we are the distinction between what is holy and what is unholy. We've got to take that stand. And like what Rick just said in his book, stay at your post. Stay at your post. And when you see something that's wrong, say that it's wrong. Address that it's wrong.
Isn't that something that they're always telling you? If you see something, say something.
Exactly.
Don't just sit there if you see something going on that shouldn't be happening or somebody looking suspicious and you say, well, it's not my business. You don't say anything. No, if you see something, you got to say something.
If you're silent, you're basically, in essence, supporting what's going on.
Right.
Just like when you don't cast a vote. When you don't cast a vote, you're actually voting for the wrong party when you don't cast a vote. But just a few examples of things that have taken place in this nation, and it's like, where's the disconnect? Okay, but like what Hank Kunneman was saying, where's the pastors? Where's the Christians standing up? And so, there was a 2 months ago, I think it was, or whatever, and I was telling Mom they had it on Victory News, and for it to make Victory News, okay, it's like, whoa. But and I was like, man, why don't people see this? And it's because of the spirit of deception. Right. There's such a delusion that's going on. Well, there was a man that was convicted of murdering a pregnant woman, okay? He was convicted of murdering the pregnant woman, and ultimately the unborn baby died. So here's the mother and the baby that both died in this incident. And he was brought to trial, and New Hampshire convicted him a month ago or whatever. The man was convicted of murder of the mother, but he was also convicted of murder of an unborn child.
Hallelujah.
Where's the disconnect? Why is this man, now rightfully so,
That's right.
should have been convicted of murdering this woman and murdering her unborn child? Murder, and that's the words they used. When they convicted this man, he's being found guilty and convicted of murdering an unborn child. Where is the disconnect? Why aren't people seeing that and saying, whoa, wait a minute. This unborn child was killed and it was murdered. What about, but if she had gone to an abortion clinic and just done it herself, it would not have been classified as murder. But this man got convicted of murdering an unborn child.
Right.
Why is it rightfully so? Why is it that hundreds of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of unborn children just in this nation alone have been murdered, and no one's being held accountable for it? No one's being convicted. All these people that perform these murders, why aren't they being convicted like this man was? This man was convicted of murder. Why aren't these people being convicted of murdering unborn children? Why?
Double standard.
It's a double standard in this nation. It's a disconnect. And it's because people are so into themselves and so selfish and so about what they want and what they can gain and what they can get. And it doesn't matter what happens to anybody else, just like how the devil is. And that's what it's about. It's these people following after evil, following after the devil. It's murder. Whether it's somebody at the hands of somebody else that takes their lives, or if you go into one of these abortion clinics, it's murder. Plain and simple.
That's right. Absolutely.
Anyways, so the next one, I was telling Mom that they had showed this on Flashpoint. As I told you, we're going to be like Flashpoint today.
Yes, indeed.
All right? They showed this on Flashpoint.
Yep.
And it's like, come on, people. Just why aren't people getting this? Where is the disconnect? How can you say these things are right? If my grandparents were alive today, I could just imagine. I mean, they're probably not, I don't know if you could actually do this, roll around your graves, but, if they hear this stuff, be rolling around in their graves being like, what is going on up there, okay? But Flashpoint showed a video of these two girls, these two women, whatever, and they were younger. They were probably like in their mid to late 20s or whatever. And we got this whole thing about sexual preferences and orientations and stuff like that, okay? And, Oh, I thought you said something. And they released this video, and they're saying how pedophile, is that how you say it? Pedophilia is now considered a normal thing. It's now considered something that is a proper sexual orientation, a sexual preference. How is that? How can you say that the action towards a child, a what? I'm being careful.
We have children present. I'm saying 'cause we have children present.
No. An action between a child, how is that right?
It's not.
How can we say it's not?
It's not right.
It's not.
No matter how you cut it,
How
it's
can
not
you
right.
say that's okay to accept? It's now a choice that's acceptable. If somebody wants to do this, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly right. It's not. And that's where this nation has been heading. That is immoral. It's wrong. It's disgusting. That is not something that should be taking place. And how can women stand up? I get how can men stand up and say, oh, that's okay. But how can even women, how can moms stand up and say that's okay? How can a parent stand up and say that's okay? Because these people aren't in their right minds.
That's right, they
And
are.
that's where this nation is going.
It's a reprobate.
It's a
mind. That's what the
reprobate
Bible says.
mind. It's a complete reprobate mind. And that's why, and that's just a couple examples of things that are taking place in this nation. But more and more, there's a remnant of people. There's a remnant of pastors and a remnant of believers standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. This is completely wrong. And we need to be doing that. We need to be standing up and saying, this is wrong. When you hear somebody talking, you need to bring it forth and say, whoa, listen, hey, hold on a second. That's immoral. That's wrong. That is evil. These things are wrong. But let's scale it down to a lighter level. Okay, I was listening to Keith Moore on Thursday, and he was talking to Christians, and he was saying, how can Christians do some of these things that they're doing? Now Keith's kind of laid back and doesn't really get involved in stuff like that a lot, But he was coming out and he was saying, why aren't Christians making this distinction? Why are Christians doing the same thing that the world is doing? They're going along with what the world is doing. And the example that he used is, why are Christians sitting down at night and watching these TV shows that they have out? They're not funny. Nope. They're disgusting. They're an abomination to Yahweh. What is a Christian doing watching these TV shows that they have now? There's got to be a distinction. Right. If you call yourself a Christian and you call yourself set apart and holy from Yahweh and you're going to take a stand, you should not be one of these people that are sitting down in front of and watching these TV shows or participating in things that the world is doing or whatever it is. We have got to be making a clear distinction and standing in that distinction. And so that the world knows, whoa, they are different. They are different. We don't partake of those things. Mom taught us a long time ago, others may, we may not. And that's a strong, strong statement. Others may, but we may not. You know what? You have actually, I don't even know if you have the right to, but people have the right to make a choice to do what they want.
They have a free will. And
they have a free will to do it. They have a right and a free will, have at it.
Can't choose the consequences.
But you can't choose the consequences. You can't choose what could be coming around the corner. And that's the whole point.
That's right.
So, we've got to be the distinction. We've got to recognize, we've got to walk in excellence, and we got to be the ones that stand up and say, enough's enough.
Right.
No more. Enough is enough.
Right. We're coming into the Passover season, and I'm sure we'll be covering that more as the weeks go on. But the whole thing with Passover, there's a time of preparation leading up to it.
Right.
That you have to get ready for the Passover. It's not just, the Passover's here, we're ready. No, there's a certain process that comes before it. And it's almost like spring cleaning and all that. But when I was thinking of what to talk about today, I was in the middle of cooking supper last night, actually. And I was thinking to the Torah portion and thinking through different things and, asking Holy Spirit. And this phrase popped into my head as I'm making supper, which happened to be lentil soup. And this phrase popped into my head, and I said it to her. And I'm like, I don't know where that's going. But I said, this phrase just pops into my head. Life is like a pot of soup. That's all. And I was like, what in the world? I must have been smelling this soup too long. I didn't it's affecting me. What I didn't know is that is an actual phrase that people use. It's an old-time phrase, like from way back, that people, a lot of times they'll say, life is like a pot of soup or a bowl of soup, and you have the choice of whether you're going to be a spoon or a fork. Like, it's hard to eat soup with a fork. A lot of it will escape through the tines of the fork. So better to be prepared for the right thing when you are encountering life. When life presents what it has to you, you need to have the right utensils. So I was like, okay. And I started looking into it a little bit, and I was thinking through it, just to take a pot of soup. Have you ever made a pot of soup? Anybody in here, I'm sure, has made a pot of soup. And, a lot of times we follow recipes, but then every now and then you have this idea in your mind and this picture in your mind. You can't find a recipe that is that picture that you have in your mind. So you pretty much create your own recipe in your mind. Anybody ever done that? You just throw a bunch of things that sound good and sound like they would taste good together and put it in there. And a lot of times it comes out really good. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is so good. But if somebody asked you, how did you make it? Well, I put a little of this and a little of that and a pinch of this. And you can't really answer that question fully. But it comes out awesome. But, have you ever happened, when you're making that pot of soup that you put in too much of one ingredient? Like, let's say too much salt. You put too much salt in the soup. it's overpowering. It changes the whole flavor of it. So then what happens? You say, well, I want to try to fix this soup so it's edible. So you start adding a bunch of other stuff into it to try to absorb the salt, or let's try putting this in and change the flavor. And sometimes it works, and sometimes you can fix it. But other times it just keeps getting worse. I've had pots of soup like that where it's like, okay, this is not fixable. It's not edible. We need to throw it out and start over again. Start fresh, but start fresh and don't make the same mistake. Like if I made the new pot of soup and did the same thing I did with that old pot of soup, why would I expect it to taste any better? So it is with life, you know, and that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing you've always done, but expecting different results. No, life is about learning. Preferably learning from somebody else's experience so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. That's always the best way. You know, if you learn from somebody else that they come up to you and they're all bandaged up and everything and said, hey, the bridge is out over there, I fell off the cliff. Don't go and have to fall off the cliff yourself to say, oh yeah, the bridge is out. Why don't you learn from their experience and don't even go down that road? But, you know, there's some things that you put too much in, it can throw the whole flavor off, and it can change the intended recipe to something entirely different. You know, chili is one of those things, and I don't often make chili, but I've made it a few times. And there's some recipes for chili that call for a little bit of cinnamon or even chocolate. And it sounds so weird, but it's only a tiny bit, and it enhances the flavor. Now, what if you had somebody who's like, well, I like cinnamon, and so they just like pour the cinnamon in? Well, it might start to conflict with the other flavors in the chili, and it might not taste quite good. Or let's say you decide that you're going to let your 5-year-old cook dinner that night. They don't know anything about measuring. They don't know what tastes good together, what doesn't, and they decide they're going to create their own soup. It might not be edible. It might not be something that necessarily tastes good because they don't know about putting too much salt or too much, let's say, rosemary. Rosemary is a good spice. I like rosemary, but it's powerful. When you put too much rosemary, one time I was pouring it in, like almost the whole bottle came out into the thing, and it's like, that's too much rosemary. Everything will taste like rosemary. It's supposed to be an enhancing flavor to the soup, not the entire flavor of the soup. Okay? So in life, you know, we have things in our life that are supposed to be enhancing flavors. They're supposed to give meaning. They're supposed to enhance our lives, but they're not supposed to be the overpowering flavor of our life. You know, let's take vacation, for example. Okay, our entire life is not a vacation. We have work, we got life responsibilities, we have all this stuff that we got to do. But the vacation is a break from that to enhance our lives, to allow us to rest, to whatever, but then to get us back into life so that we're more focused and clearer and stuff. There's a purpose for it.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, as you're going along, you know, sometimes, you know, that old phrase, a bit of better butter makes the batter better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's not true in life. Sometimes a bit of better butter in your situation doesn't make your batter better. Oh, that's a tongue twister. You said it, I know. But you got to learn from the mistakes and say, I don't want to add that ingredient to my life at all. I don't want, maybe I need less of this ingredient, but that one, just don't add that. You know, like pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. Don't add it to the pizza. That's my opinion. But some people will just decide something differently. But have you ever felt like your life is like a chaotic pot of soup that has all these random ingredients thrown into it that just don't go together and it's not turning out right? I think we've all been there at some point in our life. But at that point, maybe it's time for a new beginning and to find a recipe for success. We want a recipe for success in our life. We don't want it to turn out to be a flop. Or was that stone soup thing? Stone soup. Yeah. That old stone soup story. We want something that is not only enjoyable and good for us and beneficial for us, but for everybody else we come into contact with. You know, typically you don't make a pot of soup just for yourself. You make it to share with others. It would be a lot of work to go through just for yourself. But if your life is like a pot of soup, you're supposed to be sharing the goods with everybody else. But does everybody else want to partake in what you have? Or is that just your own flavor for you that nobody else likes? Just saying. So sometimes, when you come into Passover, spring is about renewal. We're coming into the month of Nisan. It actually starts on the heels of this solar eclipse on Monday, April 8th. That is Erev Nisan, Erev Chodesh Nisan. And it's the month of spring. It's the month that actually starts Yahweh's calendar. It's the first month of the year. He said this is to be the first month for you. So it's a significant month because it comes at this time of spring. And in fact, the original name for the month was Aviv, the month of spring, the month of greenness. Well, what is green? It's something that's fresh and it's coming to life. And, we're starting to see that around here. Despite what this little white stuff that covered over everything, we were starting to see little daffodils starting to poke up and the crocuses coming up. And it's always a time when you have that sense of renewal, that there's new life emerging. And, Yahweh created the seasons like that so that it's supposed to give us a taste of what our life should be like. We come to this season and we should be coming to a renewal. And sometimes you need a good deep cleaning. The Passover cleaning is where we get our spring cleaning from, and you could take down the curtains and wash them, and wash the windows, and you get the old dirt out. And we all need that, not just physically, but spiritually as well. Have you ever cooked a meal let's say like fish, like salmon or some other kind of fish, and your whole house smells like fish afterwards? This is the reason why we cook our fish outside. Because Mom's like, I do not, because I usually make salmon on Shabbats. And we don't want to show up at church smelling like salmon. It's just, I like salmon, but it's not the particular smell that I want to wear. I would not choose a bottle of salmon perfume and wear it around. It's not the flavor I'm looking for. But what happens, so you cook fish, your whole house smells like fish. What do you do after that? You try to cover it up. You spray all these nice room sprays, or you light a candle. But then what do you end up with? You end up with a flowery fish smell, or salmon pumpkin pie, these weird, it doesn't really take away the smell of the fish. It just kind of covers over it, but it kind of makes it weird too. It masks it somewhat, sometimes. But you can't just cover and mask the stink in your life. You got to get it out. You got to open up the windows, let the light in, open up the windows, air it out, get the trash out, get out whatever was smelling in the first place, and then you can put a good smell in there. Amen. Until you get out the smell, get out whatever was causing the smell, you're only going to be masking over it, but it's still going to be there. Until you get down deep and get the smell out, it's not going to turn out well. Right. Speaking of taking out trash, we always, I think Fridays is our trash day up on the hill. But we have to make sure we get the trash out way before the trash man comes to pick it up. Right. I have had mornings where I hear him up the thing and I'm like, no! And I go running up there and with the barrow in tow, try to beat him to it. But usually by the time we hear him, it's too late. So then we stick it across the road so he can pick it up as he's going back up. What's this random trash barrel? There's no house there. But it works, and he'll pick it up. Yeah. But, in my experience, for one, you don't want to miss the trash man, because then you're going to be stuck with stinky, smelly trash, especially in the summertime when it starts getting warm and humid. You don't want that sitting in you just don't want that sitting there. But what I've noticed about the trash man? He never stops out in front of the house and comes up and rings the doorbell and says, I noticed you didn't put your trash out. Can you bring it out so that I can take it? No, it's your responsibility to get your trash out. Nobody else is going to come and take it from you. Even Yeshua himself is not going to come to your door and say, I'm taking your trash. You have to willingly bring it and lay it down. You got to bring it out. You got to clean it out. And so in our lives, we have to be willing to get the trash out. And this is all part of it, because we're talking about the clean and the unclean things. Right. And we got to get the unclean things out of our lives. We got to get rid of anything that could be smelly trash in our lives. Isaiah 1:16 says, in the NLT says, Wash yourselves and be clean. Get your sins out of my sight. Give up your evil ways. You got to get it out. Get it out of my sight. I like the Message paraphrase. Go home and wash up. You know, a lot of times that's what we need to do. Go home and wash up. Clean up your act. Sweep your lives clean of your evil doings so I don't have to look at them any longer. Say no to wrong. Learn to do good. Right. We got to learn to say no to something that's wrong. Amen. It's a small word, N-O. One of the hardest things to tell our flesh sometimes. N-O, that one tiny little word. But it can make a big difference in our life. If we learn to say no to the wrong things, say no to the trash in our lives, then we find that our lives are coming up. The Voice translation of that verse, I like how it said it. Wash yourselves, clean up your lives, remove every speck of evil in what you do before me. Put an end to all your evil. Right. Remove every speck. Remind me of the Passover cleaning, where you're getting every speck of leaven out. And I mean, they'll take their cushions off of their couches and get down in there, and even places where you think there shouldn't be any kind of leaven or breadcrumbs in there. Like, I mean, why would you be having breadcrumbs in, I don't know, your bathroom cupboard? Like, there shouldn't be. Some places it shouldn't be. But you're cleaning it out anyway, just in case it happened to, or in case some little mouse brought it in there. Deuteronomy 23:14 says, "For the Lord your God moves about in your camp to protect you and deliver your enemies to you. Your camp must be holy, so that he will not see anything among you anything indecent and turn away from you." Right. So if you have even a speck of smelly trash, it's going to contaminate everything. Right. You can have your house beautifully cleaned up and ready and candles burning, but if you have one small speck of smelly trash, think of like a rotten piece of meat. If you had a rotten piece of meat in a room, until you get that meat out, it's not going to be clean. Right. It's not going to be clean. And you know, when you start to declutter, I'm just talking the natural, you start to declutter and get rid of things, it feels like it's taking a weight off of your shoulders. Like the prospect of going into it might not seem pleasant. Like going into it like, I gotta declutter, I gotta clean this up, I gotta do this. And it can seem like a chore, but when you get into it, you feel like a weight's been taken off of you. And you feel clean. Like you feel better when it's clean. Sometimes the things that your flesh is telling you it doesn't like the idea of is the very thing that is the best thing for you. I said that to Mom. Like I started this habit of when I take my shower, I'll turn the water cold before I get out because it's supposed to be good for your immune system. But I always have this little thought in the back of my mind, I'm already cold. I wanted to take a nice hot shower. I don't want to go in freezing water. And so it's that your body's like, no, I don't want this. But as soon as the cold water hits you, it's refreshing and you feel alive and invigorated. And it's like, oh, it's more the prospect of it, I think, that causes us the reactions that we have. Once we actually do it, it's a piece of cake, not literally. But the enjoyment that we get from decluttering our natural home should be even more amplified when we're talking about cleaning out our spiritual lives. And, you know, we go through these seasons and it's necessary because, like, you walking through the world, you're going to be picking up trash. You know, what if I said, I already took the trash out 3 months ago. I did it, I took it out, they took it away. Well, over that time, over the last 3 months, we've accumulated more trash. That's right. So you got to have a continuous process of throwing out the trash. And sometimes, you know, it's best as you're going through the world picking up trash, mainly in your mind. That's the biggest place where the enemy likes to dump trash. It's best, I mean, you have the choice to hang on to that trash as long as you want to. You know, you have the choice of hanging on to it for 5 months, or you have the choice of saying, I'm walking right over to the trash can and throwing it in there now, and I'm not putting it off till later, because sometimes later never comes. And the clutter starts picking up, this clutter starts building when you don't do the work of keeping up on it. It's easier to maintain something than to have to come from behind and clean it all out. What happens when somebody has piles of foul, smelly, rotting trash? It draws, it attracts things that are not pleasant. Rodents and cockroaches and maggots and it's disgusting things. Those are things that we find revolting and but we got to realize that it was the trash that caused the revolting things to come.
That's right.
Because those type of things are attracted to unclean stuff.
Consequence of it.
It's the consequence. So you can't have the trash without the smell and the rodents and the maggots and all that. They come hand in hand.
Absolutely.
You ever watch that TV show Hoarders? I haven't seen it in forever, but I remember seeing one episode, and it's like shocking because they go through this whole process of helping somebody. And some people on this program, they try to hold on to everything, treasures and trash, and they're all mixed in together. And you can't distinguish the trash from the treasures because they don't know the distinction between trash and treasure, between what's clean and unclean. So there's clean clothes mixed in with the dirty clothes, and there's rotting food mixed in with the good food. And at that point, sometimes you just got to throw everything out and start over. Sometimes you got to do a deep clean. And that's what the program is about, is like they'll literally go in and say, we got to, first of all, was the first thing they do, let's take out the trash. You can't clean up until you take out the trash. Got to get rid of the trash. And unfortunately, because of all the clutter, a lot of these people don't have access to the things that are really valuable to them. That would be the things that would add value to their lives are blocked because they have all these things that they don't need, or worse, that are negatively impacting their lives. And so, again, you get all these unwanted guests. I've seen there's a girl in somewhere in Europe, and she cleans people's homes for free, but she does it for these people who have these type of extreme cases, like years and years of filth. And she does it for free because she wants to help them get a fresh start. But then it's like, obviously something happened to get them to that point, so you gotta keep up with it, otherwise it turns back to the way it was before. Right. But if you asked anybody, who wants to live in an unclean house? Nobody. Nobody wants to live in an unclean house. But if you don't stay up on stuff, it becomes unclean slowly, almost without you realizing it. And then by the time you turn around, it's like, oh my goodness, how did I get to this place where everything is filthy? Because you didn't keep up with it. And our spiritual lives are the same. As the enemy's trying to throw all this garbage in us, if we don't keep cleaning it out, they're going to turn around and be like, oh my goodness, now I need to do a major overhaul and gut the place. I've been overrun by this trash. Let's stay up with it and keep it up. Now, what happens if you get everything out, and like I said, back to the rotting piece of meat, and you're holding on to this rotting piece of meat, and you're literally holding on. You're carrying this rotting piece of meat around in your hand. No, not only will that meat smell, but because you've touched it, now you're gonna smell. You gotta let go of it and wash your hands and clean, and don't pick it up again. Don't touch the unclean thing. Don't touch the thing that's gonna make you smell. Right, don't hold on to it because you become unclean. And not only that, you have a rotting piece of meat in your hand, and then you go and touch other things. Now you're spreading uncleanness and possibly disease, because we know what rotting meat does. You're spreading disease around everything you touch. Now, what if you take that rotting piece of meat and put it in your soup that you were making? Back to the soup story. You throw that piece of rotting meat in your soup, yuck. What happened to your soup? Now that entire soup is ruined.
That's right.
It's contaminated by that. You can't say, oh, I'll pick it back out. No, everything it's touched is now contaminated. But what if a friend gave you that piece of meat? Maybe they didn't know it was rotting at the time. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not giving you rotting meat. But they handed it to you, and you feel like, I've got to keep it. They gave it to me. I don't want to let it go. the enemy likes to try to get rotten things in our lives, and he uses people a lot of times. And it may be with or without their knowledge that that thing is contaminated. That thing has talking about soul ties, but has negative things attached to it that you've got to get rid of. Never let whoever gave it to you be more of a thought in your mind than getting the trash out of your life. Because it will start to affect every aspect of your life. It won't just stay there. When Yahweh wants to bless you, he puts a person in your life. When the enemy wants to destroy you, he puts a person in your life. We got to be aware of that. That's why the verse that Sherry was reading in 2 Corinthians, where it's talking about come out from among unbelievers. Picture them as rotting pieces of meat. Not literally. I'm not saying that they're all rotting pieces of meat. But they put off a spiritual odor. And you hang around with them, you're going to smell like them. Just like you're in your house with the fish that you cooked, you're going to smell like it. Whatever you hang around with, you're going to become like. You're going to smell like it. You're going to take on that odor. And so we have to decide, are we going to hold on to that junk? Are we going to hold on to that trash, those unclean, those smelly things? Or are we going to walk right over to the trash barrel and throw it away? Get rid of it. Wash our hands and move on. Today's thoughts are tomorrow's actions.
Right.
And we got to be very careful. That's why he said, you got to guard your mind. You got to guard your heart. That's the biggest battlefield is in your mind. Right. If, today's lust is tomorrow's adultery. You think it, you're going to end up acting on it. Today's anger is tomorrow's acting out in whatever way. People who are convicted of murder and all that, it didn't get there overnight. It wasn't just they had no thoughts and then just suddenly they did it. It came from a thought. Amen. It started with a thought. So many times the first thing we need to do is just take out the trash. Take the trash out of your mind. Dump it. What is the aroma that's coming from you? Do you attract people or do you repel people by your attitude, by what's coming off of you? 2 Corinthians 2:14 says, "Thanks be to God who always leads us in triumph in the Messiah Yeshua, and through us spreads and makes evident everywhere the sweet fragrance of the knowledge of him." Sweet fragrance. We're supposed to be putting off a sweet fragrance. Now, the verse also goes on to say that those in the darkness will perceive it as a stinking, foul, rotting scent, but that's because they are in that. They're in the darkness. But to those who are willing to receive, it's going to be a sweet fragrance. You ever walk into, I don't know why this came to mind, but walk into like a bakery, and they're a keto bakery that uses all natural stuff. But they're baking something, and it smells so good. And it draws you to want to go and find out, what is it that they're baking? Because it smells so good. That's how our lives are supposed to be. That we're supposed to be putting off such a good fragrance from our lives that people are drawn. They're drawn to say, why do you smell so good? Why is your life different than everybody around us? Why is your life different than the people that you're around? Because I'm distinct, because I'm set apart for him. And if we're set apart for him, then it is going to make that distinction. It's going to make that distinction in our lives. The verse that Sherry had read, 2 Corinthians 6:17, the Lord says, "Get away from unbelievers. Separate yourselves from them. Have nothing to do with anything unclean. Then I will welcome you." The Message says, "Leave the corruption and compromise. Leave it for good." Don't pick it back up. Leave it for good. 2 Corinthians 7:1 says, "Therefore, since we have these promises, dear friends, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfecting holiness out of reverence for God." Now, that goes contrast to what a lot of Christians have in their mind. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. We can never expect to be perfect. Well, why is it that the Apostle Paul is telling us we are to perfect holiness? Right. We are to be working toward a perfect state. Are we right now in our perfect state? No, but we are progressing toward it. We are always supposed to be making progress toward more and more holiness, which is being like him. Another translation says, therefore, since we have these great and wonderful promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, completing holiness, living a consecrated life, a life set apart for God's purpose in the fear of God. We're supposed to be living a life that is set apart for his purposes. The easy version says, so we must keep ourselves clean from everything that makes our bodies or our spirits unclean. Keep ourselves clean. Once you clean up, keep it clean.
That's right.
Keep the maintenance going. A lot easier. It takes a lot less time. And I think even Terry talks about that, about setting aside 20 minutes a day. Terry Savelle-Foy talks about setting aside like 20 minutes a day to maintain the house, keep up on it, and then you're not going to have all the work at the end. And it provides more time for you to be able to do other things that you enjoy. The Voice translation says, we must respect and obey God, then we will become more and more like him. Because we have these promises, dearly loved ones, out of respect for God, we should scour the filth from our flesh and spirit and move toward perfect beauty and holiness. Scour it. Sometimes you got to take a scouring pad to it. If it's been baked on there for a while, sometimes you got to scour it clean.
Yes, indeed.
So we got to get to the point where we're, number one, we're not linking up with those who pollute us. We're not going to hook up with the people who are contaminating us. We're not going to be surrounding ourselves with contaminating and corrupting influences. And we got to come to the point where we don't allow the garbage to stay in our mind. First of all, you got to do a deep clean, get it out, but then keep it out. And practice keeping it out, keeping it on the outside. Philippians 4:8 says, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, and if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate and focus on these things. Think on these things. And that should be the test we run every thought by. If we find ourselves thinking a thought, okay, does this pass the Philippians 4:8 test?
That's right.
Does it pass the test? If it doesn't pass the test, ditch the thought. Throw it away. You have control over your mind. We're supposed to be taking every thought captive. Don't just let it stay in there. Like Brother Hagin said, you can't stop birds from flying over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair.
Absolutely.
You can't stop the thoughts from flying through your head, but you can keep them from taking up residence and becoming a stronghold in your mind. There's a phrase, a quote that I saw that said, what you permit will persist. If you permit that garbage to stay, it will persist. It will stay there. What you fail to master in your life will eventually master you. People decide their habits, and their habits determine their future. Absolutely. You got to determine your future by what habits you have. If you don't like where your future would be heading with those habits, then change the habits. We went through that, talked about that extensively when we were talking about the fast. But this is a life of fasting that we're living. We're supposed to be living that, continuously stripping things off that could hinder us. Because we want to get closer to him. We want to be able to be carriers of his presence and not blockers of it. We don't want to be getting in the way of what he's trying to do, especially in these end times. There's people who are counting on us. So this other quote, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become your character.
That's right.
Watch your character, it becomes your destiny.
That's right.
It's all in line. It's a progression. Romans 12:2 says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing your mind. That's a constant process. It's a continual renewing. We are continually being renewed. It says that your youth is renewed like the eagles. It's supposed to be a continuous thing. It's not a one-time renewing and then you move on. Nope. We all need continual renewing.
Absolutely.
You just walk in this broken, curse-filled world, you're going to need a renewing. You're going to need something to pick you up again. 1 Thessalonians 5:22 says, abstain from all appearance of evil. I like the Message paraphrase of that. It says, throw out anything tainted with evil. Throw it out. Anything tainted with evil, throw it out. Romans 13 through 14 says, the night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore, let us cast off, throw out the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk properly, as in the day, not in revelry and drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Yeshua the Messiah and make no provision for the flesh. Don't make it a habitable place for your flesh.
Absolutely.
God wants us to live holy lives, so that means we have to take the trash out regularly. Take it out and put it out. It's time for us to take out the trash, get rid of all those smelly, unclean things. And it says that he'll receive us with honor, but not only will he receive us with honor, but we'll spread his fragrance around because we won't have the trash cluttering our lives.
Right.
Not a smelly fish fragrance. That's not what we want to be giving to everybody. But because we've been holding on to the garbage in our lives, but something that's a pleasing aroma. And so it's time to do a spiritual spring cleaning. You know, like it said, the night is far spent, the day is at hand. The day of the Lord is at hand. We're coming closer and closer to that end point. All the signs are showing it. And I don't think it's any coincidence that all these things are increasing as we're coming toward this eclipse. And I don't think it's a coincidence the eclipse is taking place on April 8th. 8 is the symbol of new beginnings. Right. It marks something. It marks a point in time. It's not a coincidence that it's taking place on the eve of Nisan. That we're coming into the Passover season, and we know that the end times are like a second Exodus. They're patterned after the first Exodus. Yep. That we want to be the children of Israel living in the land of Goshen, where there's light in the land of Goshen, no matter what's going on around us. But we got to be in position for it. We got to make sure that, like we were saying, that you're not touching the unclean thing, you're not making unholy alliances, you're not lining yourself up with the platforms that are for the enemy. Because they're going to come under judgment for that. And that's not something that gives Yahweh pleasure. Not something that he's happy about. He's giving people every chance possible to repent.
Right.
But if they don't, there comes a point where the ark door is closed.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's people who call themselves believers who will find themselves on the wrong side of the door.
Right.
That's even worse. That's even sadder. Because you're supposed to be saved from the destruction that's going on in the world. But you're hanging around with the same stuff that same people they're hanging around with. You're going the same places they are, watching the same things that they do, lining yourselves up with them. How are you any different? You're supposed to be distinct. You're supposed to be different. Romans 1:28 says this. You referenced this verse earlier. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind. Now, the word reprobate means shameless, morally unprincipled, and to condemn and to be rejected by God without hope of salvation. That's right. That's where the world is headed.
That's right.
We're here to be lights. We're here to shine. One last scripture, Philippians 2:1-4 and 12-15 says, therefore, if there's any consolation in the Messiah, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look not only for his own interests, but also for the interest of others. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Right. See, it's not just I'm willing to do it, but you got to back it up with actions. Right. You might say that I'm a Christian, everybody knows I'm a Christian, I'm a person who has standards and I stand for truth, but if you're not showing it in your life, then you're a hypocrite. You're lying. You're not telling the truth. What you what you profess to believe will be shown by your actions and how you live your life. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. We're supposed to shine in the midst of this crooked and perverse generation. And there is a lot coming down the pike. There's a lot ahead of us. We as the church need to start, judgment begins in the house of God. Amen. We as the church need to clean out our lives, clean house, so that we can help those out there. We say this all the time, that it's not just about us. It's about those people out there. But we got to get it right here first. Absolutely. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Absolutely. We're going to keep clean hands and a pure heart. We're going to keep cleaning out the garbage so that we can be those vessels that he can use. And we won't be like what Yeshua said to the Pharisees, that you're whitewashed sepulchres. You're all pretty on the outside, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. Amen. You're full of something that's defiling. You're full of something that's unclean inside of you, all the while outside looks like this beautiful show. No, our inside and our outside should reflect each other. They should be the same. We're clean inside. Absolutely. And we're clean outside. Clean hands and a pure heart. Inside and outside. Right. Amen? Did you have something?
To pull all of this together, Jordan was just saying, judgment begins in the house of the Lord. And we're in a time frame where people really don't like to hear about judgment, okay? They think, little Jesus, meek and mild, never would hurt a child, okay? But to bring it all back down to judgment beginning in the house of the Lord, in this Torah portion, it talks about Aaron's sons, okay? Nadab and Abihu, okay? And it might sound a little harsh. I mean, the people of the world might think that's rather harsh. It says they brought in strange fire. And what happened? They were consumed, and they both lost their life, okay? And people of the world would say, well, that's harsh, that's a little bit too strong. And when we're trying to be examples and say, no, we have a strict standard. This is the standard we live by. This is what the Word says. This is his way of doing things and being right. People will call us legalistic and all that. And if we were to point out something like this from the Torah portion, it would say, no, judgment does begin in the house of the Lord. Okay? Because he says over there that people are going to recognize a distinction and a difference between the holy and the common, the unholy, between the unclean and the clean, okay? He talks about that he's going to have others acknowledge him as hallowed by the people that come close to him and go before him, okay? So we're setting the pace, we're setting the pathway. And if we're unclean, you're going to lead others to be unclean. Jordan was talking about houses. It's like, well, how does it get that way? Little by little, things get polluted, okay? And then she talks about, well, what do you got to do? You got to come in and you've got to clean it out. But, there comes a point where a house has been so contaminated that you can't come in and rectify it. You can't come in and clean. You could come in and maybe take a bulldozer and whatever and gather all the stuff and get it out. But the pollution has gone so deep that what is the Board of Health going to do? It's going to condemn the whole building. Okay? And we're looking at a time frame where we look at the example of, well, what did they do? It doesn't particularly say specifically what was out of order with these two sons, but we know he's a just God, and he's not willing that any perish, okay? They had been in 7 days of preparation for Aaron to put on the priestly robes. Everything was in order. Everything, he has an order and a way of doing things and being right. And they had been following this way for 7 days. This was going on, and Aaron was had put on the priestly robes, and he was following an order that he was going to take the place of the high priest. And here his sons come in, and they contaminate the atmosphere. And this is an example to what? There were millions of Israelites out there watching, and they had to understand what Yahweh was saying. You got to make a distinction between what's right and what's wrong, between what's holy and what's unholy. And your lives need to reflect it. The people call us legalistic. They would say this is, oh, but that's Old Testament. That's Old Testament, okay? You don't find that. Well, how about Ananias and Sapphira? In the book of Acts, I might add, which is, we're the continuation of that. The book of Acts never ended. That's us. It's gone on over these generations, and we are. Ananias and Sapphira, that's New Testament, okay? What had they done? They were living something in their life that was unclean. They had a choice. They had a choice. They could have gone in and done what was right, but they chose not to. And we are in a time when things are so serious. And if you, like they were saying, you look across everything that's coming, everything is just kind of lining up, okay? And we're coming from Purim to Passover. Pesach is a time of judgment. What side of the judgment are you going to be on? But like she said, you clean everything out. You clean out the unclean so that you won't be found wanting in the day of judgment. And so, you know, if we seem, well, the world would say you're legalistic or you're intolerant. No, we're biblical, okay? He says, be holy as I'm holy. And people go, well, we're not holy, you know. Yes, the real us, the spirit man in us that's renewed if you're born again, you're made in his image, you're carriers of that, you are holy. He says, be perfect like I'm perfect. The real me is perfect. The job is through the word to renew your mind so that it thinks his thoughts, and it has your flesh get so thin that the spirit of who you really are gets to come out. And in this day and this hour where actually there's not that the line has been blurred. The line has been totally erased. And for people who have a calling in a pulpit to be assimilating that which is holy with that which is unholy is not the fragrance that's supposed to be spread, a sweet-smelling fragrance to the Lord. It's an abomination. It's a rotten-smelling fragrance rising to the Lord. And judgment does begin in the house of the Lord. And we're seeing things falling into place, signs, wonders, and miracles. Look at what those signs, wonders, and miracles were at Pesach, okay? You know, people always think of signs, wonders, and miracles, oh, healings and revival and, you know, money cometh to me now and prosperity and blessings and all that. That is one side. But there's another side to signs, wonders, and miracles when you're on the wrong side, okay? And everything that happened to Pharaoh and his people were signs, wonders, and miracles because they chose to be against what he called holy and unholy. So we have a decision to make. What side of the line are we on? What side of judgment? I don't fear judgment. I don't fear judgment. Why? Because, see, this is my standard. I don't have to apologize. I don't have to make excuses. I don't have to try to do some mental gymnastics so that people will accept me. This is what he said. He's the creator of everything that ever was, is, and ever will be. And he gets to say how we should be living. He gets to say what is the right way and what is the wrong way, what is clean and what is unclean. And the job we have as children of the Most High is to find out what thus saith the Lord. What is his standard of living for this time and this hour? And that's the only standard we live by. And those out there who would say, you're legalistic, you're intolerant, you're, whatever, okay? That's okay. We're here trying to put the truth out because ultimately we do care. We don't want anybody to perish. And we're going to give an account and be held accountable for if we did speak out of this portal, out of this pulpit, did we speak what he said? Did we help others to know what the truth is in a time of great deception? People need the truth right now. They need it desperately because we haven't seen anything yet. Things are coming, things are getting into place, and we are the ones who can be the light in the darkness, shining it so that at least they have a chance to say, there is another way. There is another way. And we walk that fine line. His word is our standard. We let him define for us what is holy and what is unholy. Because we don't want to be walking forth like Ananias and Sapphira or like Nadab and Abihu, okay? And we've taken what is holy and we've defiled it, okay? And we're trying to smear a line so that we're accepted. No, we are already accepted, okay? We're accepted in him, okay? And what we need to do is we need to be that light, to be the example going forth. What would Yeshua do? He walked according to this. Why? Because this is who he was. And this is who we are. And in this day and this hour, we let the word be our firm foundation. No matter what, we had this earthquake that some people even felt it here in Fitchburg. And there was somebody that asked me, did you feel the earthquake? Did you feel it shaking? And I said, no, as a matter of fact, I heard about it because of Amir sending his little notifications of that there was an earthquake in Lebanon, New Jersey. But I didn't feel it. We didn't feel it in our house. And I made this comment to the person, must be my confession that I make every day. Gabriel and I make a confession every day. That we build our lives on the firm foundation of this word. And no matter what's going on in the world, we will not be shaken. It's working. My house did not shake. No matter what's going on in the world, if you build your life on the firm foundation of this word, you will not be shaken. Because let me tell you, things are going to be shaken. It says the whole foundations of everything that men trust in are going to be shaken. But this stands forever. This is unshakable. This is a firm foundation, and it's the only answer in this day and this hour. If you want to be on the right side of anything that's going on right now, let this be it. Let this distinguish who you are and whose you are and the standard that you live by. And you know what? All is well in our household of faith. Amen. Praise the Lord.
Well, thank you for those of you who joined us on Facebook. We trust you've gotten something out of this message. We will see you on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Until then, you have a blessed week.